Sugar, how you handle your pit determines if you get to your palace. Okay? How you handle your pit determines if or when you get to your palace. What do I mean? Right now, sugar, all of us are in a pit. Okay? Every last one of us, myself included. We are in some type of pit. It could be a health pit, a money pit, financial pit, a professional pit, career pit, a relationship pit. Okay. Um, but for all of us, there's some area of our life that is just dark. It is dank. It stinks. It's a hole. We don't know how we gonna get out of it. We trying to navigate our way through it as best as we can in this darkness. It is a pit. We are uncomfortable. We don't like it. We want out of it. It's a pit. Okay. All of us are in a pit, right? But how we handle this pit determines if and when we get to our palace. What is our palace? Whatever that goal is that you want to achieve, whatever the profession that you want, whatever it is that you want to feel, whatever life that you want to experience, whatever your next level is, that is your palace. Okay, whatever weight loss goal, whatever relationship goal, whatever financial goal, that's your palace. All right. Now, a lot of times when we find ourselves in a pit, we make three main mistakes, and these mistakes actually prolong the pit. All right, we end up in the pit longer because of these three common mistakes. All right. Mistake number one, we try to skip the pit. We try to just leapfrog right over the pit. We try to act like the pit ain't happening, or we try to do stuff to try to stay, not necessarily stay out of the pit, but once we find ourselves in a pit, instead of learning what we need to learn while we're in this pit, because here's the thing, sugar, pits happen for a reason. Okay, pits happen for a reason. It is in the pit that we actually become, that we actually grow, that we actually become stronger, wiser, better, more resourceful, more responsible. It happens in the pit. So if you're constantly skipping the pit, every time a pit happens, you calling somebody to help get you out the pit. You doing stuff to try to just here. You're not spending that time in the pit. You're not examining the pit. You're not learning from the pit, and you just skipping over the pit. Guess what? You're not getting stronger. You're not getting wiser. You're not getting what it is that you need so that you can maintain. Let me say it different. When you skip the pit, you might get to the palace, but you can't necessarily stay at the palace, and you won't have the ability to sustain at the palace. You'll go visit the palace and end up coming right back to the pit. Life will just be a boomerang. Okay, because you're not staying in the pit long enough, doing what you need to do in the pit to learn what it takes, not just to get to the palace, but to stay in the palace and maintain and sustain the palace without it being all this stress and pressure on your back. All right. So, us trying to skip the pit does a disservice to us, but we do it all the time. Now, the reason why I think we do it all the time is because we don't recognize or realize that pits are part of the process. All right. If you look at anybody that has attained a significant level of success, they've attained a palace. Okay. They will tell you that they had some real pit seasons. All right. Tyler Perry. No one could argue that that man is in a palace. That's a palace. He got this nice studios and Tyler Perry Studios. It's a palace. He is at the palace point in his life. Okay, that is not just. My mind is working so fast, sugar. He is in a palace, but that does not mean that he still doesn't encounter pits. This is a whole tangent, but let me just run with it. Just because we get to the palace does not mean that we won't still encounter pits. We think that when we get to the palace that there are no more pits. To be clear, life goes pits, palace, palace, pits, pits, palace, palace, pits, pits, palace, palace, pits. All right. No one is ever just in the palace and there are no pits in sight. Yeah, you're in the palace, but there may be a pit in your backyard. You may be in the palace in your relationship, but there's a pit over in your finances. You may be in the palace in your professional and in your career, but there may be a pit over in your relationships. You can be in a palace and still have a pit. Okay? Back to what I was saying. Tyler Perry in a palace, but he often frequently tells us about the pit that he was in when he was homeless. All right? Oprah, palace. Palace. No one would argue that. But she tells how growing up in Mississippi, what that felt like when she lost her job as a news anchor. Pit. Every person that you can really think of that is in the that we would look at and say, oh, their life is amazing, they have this amazing influence, this amazing, there is a pit that they had to endure before they got to that palace. Okay, so when we skip that pit, when we skip the lessons of the pit, when we try to skip over it, then we're doing ourselves a disservice, because it's only what we get in that pit, what we learn in the pit, that prepares us for the palace. All right, so that's the first mistake that we make that I want us to be aware of. The second mistake that we make that I see often, that I myself, I'm guilty of this one. We complain and cry about the pit. We gonna complain and complain and complain and complain and complain and complain and cry, and why me, Lord, and why is this happening, and why is it? Sugar, the more we complain and cry about the pit, the least likely we are to actually see the lessons of the pit. All right. Now, here's why I want to take us to the story of Joseph. All right. In the Bible, we learn about Joseph, who was his father's, Jacob's favorite child. Gave him a coat of many colors. God favored Joseph, gave him dreams and, visions, and he saw, kind of what would happen in the future and how his other brothers and siblings would bow to him. And of course, he went like a, immature child, and went and told his brothers what he saw. Another digress here, sugar, everything that God show you and tell you about what he has for you, that ain't for you to go and tell everybody. Sometimes we need to be quiet, because sometimes we end up in a pit because we don't know how to keep our mouth shut. All right. Sometimes the pit that we end up in is God's way of teaching us when to say, what to say, and what not to say, and who not to say it to. All right, so lesson from the pit. But Joseph didn't get that. He didn't get that memo. Okay, and so he was over running his mouth with his brothers. His brothers threw him in the pit. All right, and threw him in the pit, really intended for him to die, but then was going to sell him into slavery. So when the slavers came and he was in the pit, took him out the pit, and then he ended up in Potiphar's house, and then he ended up in prison. Just pit after pit after pit after pit after pit. All right, but as the Bible tells the story of Joseph going from pit to pit, place to place, pit to pit, it never once said that Joseph complained. It never once said that he was crying and murmuring about the pit. What he did while he was in these pit places, in the pit, in Potiphar's house, and eventually in prison, what he did was continue to use his gifts. What he did was continue to use, in the situation that he was in, he continued to use what God gave him. His unique gifting, his skills, his talents, his creativity, in the pit. But when we are crying and complaining about the pit, the only thing that we doing is sitting there crying and complaining. We're not getting better. We're not seeing what other opportunities lay in front of us. We're not taking the time to even learn what the pit is about, or what I'm supposed to see in the pit. What am I supposed to do in the pit? Maybe the pit is a pivot. Maybe this pit happened because it's trying to get me to pivot in a different direction. Sugar, that's what happened to me. And you guys have heard me tell the story, but literally 2016, I was in the palace. I was in the palace. Okay. I had just graduated with my doctor's degree in May. Got married in September, but come October, I lost my good job. So I went from the palace down over into the pit. All right. But that pit was a pivot. If that pit wouldn't have happened, I wouldn't be talking to you right now. Now, to be completely transparent, I spent about a good year, depressed, complaining, crying. Why am I in this pit, Lord? Why did you take my job? Why did you wake me up today? Like I spent a significant amount of time crying and complaining about the pit. But once I stopped crying, once I stopped complaining, and I said, okay, this pit happened for a reason. Why did this pit happen? What am I supposed to see in this pit? What is this pit supposed to help me to pivot over into? That's how I ended up here. Because I then got a chance to see all of the gifts, all of the talents, all of the skills that God put into me that I wasn't using at that other job and would have never been able to use and tap into had I stayed there. He had to snatch me out of the palace, throw me into a pit just so I could see everything that he put on the inside of me. But if I would have got stuck in that place of complaining and crying, in that pit, I would have never discovered this. I would not be Dr. Tierini right now. I would not be talking to you right now. So we can't start complaining and crying about the pit. Yes, it is okay to express, I don't like this. This is uncomfortable. That is perfectly fine. No one is telling you to walk around like, I'm fine. I'm fine now, sugar. We can be real about our pit. But what we can't do is get stuck in complaining and crying and crying and complaining and complaining and crying and crying and complaining, because you will never get out of the pit that way. You will never see what that pit was there for. You won't see the pivot. You won't see the purpose of the pit. Okay? So we can't get stuck there in that. But that is the second mistake that I see us make too often. All right? Okay, sugar, hold on. Something I forgot to say when I originally recorded that I need to make sure that I tell you. A lot of times when we get into this process of complaining and crying and crying and complaining, it's because there are some trauma and some triggers that we have not dealt with. Okay? We get stuck in the pit sometimes because there are some traumas and some triggers that we don't even know nothing about. We're not even aware of that they're happening. Okay. And these traumas and triggers, they might be something, like I said, the financial pit or the relationship pit, but it might be an emotional pit that you find yourself in. You might find yourself just, I can't go to sleep at night. Or you might find yourself dealing with a lot of anxiety right now, which is understandable because there is a lot that is happening, sugar. There's a lot that's happening. I mean, even just going to school nowadays is not safe. Being out in public really is because of all the things that are happening right now in our country. That is understandable, sugar. But what is also happening is that there's a lot of us that are walking around with trauma that we don't even know about, and we are being triggered every day in everyday situations in our going and in our coming, and we don't realize it. Okay, sugar. And when we don't realize the trauma and the triggers that we are carrying, that is a surefire way to get stuck in the pit. All right. Which can then cause us to do the complaining and the crying and the crying and the complaining, because we feel this discomfort. We feel the emotional discomfort, or maybe this financial pit that we're in, it ties to something from our childhood, or maybe this relationship pit that we're in, it's doing something that's telling us that we're not enough or that we're not okay. All of those are things that connect to some traumas. They are connecting to something that is triggering us, that as long as we stay unaware of them, as long as we stay ignorant to them, we will stay in this pit. All right. So the quickest way to get out of this pit is to make sure that we are aware of what is triggering you, sugar. Why is it that when someone says something that you don't like, you blow up? Why is it that you want to self-soothe by eating a tub of ice cream and a whole bag of Doritos? Why is it that when, we start to feel lonely, we need to, call this person or text that person that we know is not healthy for us. All of those are triggers that are connected to traumas that when we do that thing, when we eat that ice cream, when we text or call that person, when we blow up, in those scenarios, all we're doing are actions that are keeping us stuck in our pits. Okay, sugar? I forgot to say that the last time when I was, we was just talking and I recorded it the last time. So I wanted to come on here and make sure that I said that, to you, that a lot of us are really stuck in our pits and we are not moving forward because there are some things that happen. There are some things that was said. There are some traumas that we do not know about. Okay. And we are constantly walking around being triggered by various things, various conversations, various interactions that we are not aware of, sugar. So we have to become very self aware. This is where that internal work is important. You guys have heard me say it 1,000 times. This is where having a coach and or having a therapist is critical. Okay, because we can help you spot your traumas and your triggers and how they are keeping you stuck in your pit, because a lot of times, again, we can't see our own traumas and triggers. It's very rare that we can spot our own traumas and triggers. But when you are working with your coach, when you are working with your therapist, they can better help you spot those traumas and those triggers and help you to heal from them. Okay, so that you don't stay stuck in this pit of a place that you're in right now and you can go on to reach your palace. Okay. All right, sugar. I just had to jump on here real quick and say that to you because I realized I forgot to add that piece in. All right, sugar. So there you go. Let's become self-aware about our traumas and our triggers. Okay. Now back to what I was just talking about. The third mistake that I see, um, we build a house in the pit. Mm-hmm. When the pit happened, we tell ourselves, well, I guess this is it. I guess I ain't gonna ever get to. Well, maybe it ain't meant for me to. Well, let me just, and we start to build a house there. We start to make that our permanent place. We start to make that the only thing that we begin to focus on is staying right there in the pit. We normalize the pit. And we do it as a coping mechanism. All right. So if this is you, I want you to understand that I'm not telling you that like, oh, you're such a bad person. No, 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 no. All of us have made one or all of these mistakes. All right. And all of them usually come from a place of some type of coping. All right, we're trying to cope with this unexpected thing that has happened. We're trying to cope with this uncomfortable situation. We're trying to cope with the circumstances that we didn't ask for, that really suck, that are really unfair, and we don't know what to do. And so we're trying to cope, but our coping will get us caught up. That's what I need you to understand. Our coping can get us caught up. And when we get caught up, we get stuck in the pit and we can't progress forward. And so when we start to build a house in the pit, when we start to make the pit our life, our existence, this is where I am. This is where I'm going to be. I'll never do that. I'll always be here. Whenever we start talking in absolutes like that, sugar, you running into a very dangerous territory because what you speak is what will actually become your reality. So if you start thinking and speaking and believing that the pit is all that you are, it's all that you deserve, it's all that you'll ever receive, it's all that you'll ever see, then sugar, at that point, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. It will be all that you see. It will be all that you receive. It will be all that you ever experience in life. Not because that's what God has for you, but because that's what you decided for you, that is what your life will be. So if you continue to, oh, well, my finances will always be this way. Oh, well, this marriage ain't nothing but it ain't go. Well, my career, I mean, I'm just when you start to say those things and profess those things over yourself while you are in the pit, don't get surprised when you stay in that pit. Okay, so those are the main three mistakes that I see that get us stuck in the pit and prolong our time in the pit. Okay, because remember I said how you handle the pit determines if or when you get to the palace. So if you are doing any of these things in this pit, trust me, sugar, it can stop you from getting to the palace. We think, oh, well, what God has for me is for me. You are absolutely right, sugar. You're right. But we have a responsibility with that too. God gives us free will. He is a gentleman. He would not force anything on us that we say we do not want or cannot handle. So if we are trying to skip over the pit and skip over them lessons he's trying to get us, if we constantly complaining and professing that the pit is where we're going to stay, God going to say, okay, they not ready. Hold up, angels. Don't take that down there yet, because they're telling me that that's not what they want. So you can't get mad at God when you don't make it to the palace. He's giving you this pit. Sometimes it's perfection. I mean, not perfection, protection. Sometimes it is perfection. Okay, Holy Spirit, I hear you. Sometimes he gives you that pit so that he can perfect that thing that concerneth you. He can perfect what is on the inside of you. That's what he did with me. He had to perfect some stuff. Sometimes it's pruning. He got to prune some stuff off of you. But all of it is a preparation. He brings you that pit in his loving kindness to perfect, to prepare, to prune, so that you'll be ready for the palace. But if you are saying, nah, I don't want that pit. Why am I constantly in this? This pit. Oh, I'm in a pit. I'm just going to stay here in the pit. Then guess what? You have successfully declined access to your palace. And the longer, because remember, I also said when you get to the pit. So if you stay in these pit situations and you don't get the lesson, even though it's constantly coming to you, and you refuse the lesson, you refuse to learn, you refuse accountability, you refuse to stop crying, you refuse, and it takes you 5 years, 10 years, 20 years to learn what you need to learn in this pit, you prolonging your palace. So remember, just like the children of Israel, what was a 40-day journey turned into 40 years because they just couldn't get it together in their pit. So the question to ask yourself is, am I denying my palace? Am I prolonging my palace? Okay? Because what you do in this pit determines if you get to the palace at all or when you get to the palace. And for some of us, our palace is right there. Oh, we are right at the door. All we got to do is just pick up our hand and knock. All we got to do is just turn the handle. But because we still complaining and crying, but because we standing at the door going, well, I guess this is as far as I go. We are not taking access into our palace because we are leaving ourselves right here in our pit. And wouldn't that be a shame? Wouldn't that be a shame? Lord, we get to heaven and God say, well, sugar, I equipped you to live on level 8. I had a level 8 palace for you. I had a level 20 palace for you. But you stopped at level 2. You stopped at level 5. I had all of this in store for you, but because you wouldn't stop complaining, because you wouldn't take accountability, because you wouldn't learn the lesson I was trying to get to you in the pit, because you built a house there and you said that was all that you had for yourself, because you stayed in your pit, you were not able to experience the palace that I had for you. Boy, I don't know about you, sugar, but I'd be like, sir, excuse me, kind sir. Lord, can I get a do-over? Can I go back? I don't know. Is reincarnation? Can I go back? Can I try again? Can I get a do-over? So while you have the time, while you have the breath in your lungs, while you are in this pit, sugar, I beseech you, please don't get stuck in this pit. All right. Now, to ensure that we don't get stuck in the pit, there's a couple of things that I want you to focus in on right here while you're in the pit. Number 1, pray. How are you? What's your prayer life like? Okay. Are you talking to God? Because he's the one. Ultimately, God controls everything. We may think all of this stuff is happening chaotically and what we're seeing in the news and what we're seeing in the government. And we may think it's all happening willy-nilly, but it's not. It's not. It might have caught us by surprise, but it did not catch God by surprise. Okay. So are you praying? Are you talking to God to say, okay, God, look. You see this pit, sir. What is it that you want me to learn from this pit? What is it that you want me to do while in this pit? Give me the clarity, give me the direction, give me the discernment for this pit season that you have me in. What is it that you want me to do in my finances? How is it that you want me to navigate my career? What is it that you want me to say to them in this relationship? We have to make sure, sugar, that we are praying, that we are talking to God, that we are getting our instructions from Him in terms of what we need to be doing or not doing while we are in this pit. The second thing, sugar, I want to make sure that you know you got to have a positive attitude. You got to keep believing. That's the one thing. If you hear the stories of Tyler Perry, Oprah, they'll all tell you that they never stopped believing. They kept a positive attitude. No matter what negativity is going on around you, you got to make sure that you are keeping a positive attitude, a positive outlook. And that only happens if you do number three, and that's check your perspective. What are you focusing on? Are you only focusing on the problems? Are you only focusing on what's going wrong? Because when you do that, sugar, that is a one-way ticket to anxiety and depression. That is I can guarantee it that if your perspective is only focused on what's not happening in the pit, what's going wrong, what's uncomfortable, your perspective is going to be one that drives you right into anxiety and depression. And let me tell you, sugar, when we are in those spaces, we do not make good decisions. Every decision that we make from a place of anxiousness, from a place of depression, or any of those spaces would not be the best decisions. We usually make decisions from those places that lead to another ripple, another pit, another place that then we're just caught up. We're caught up in a cycle of pits at that point. Okay. So you have to make sure that you are maintaining that right perspective. Okay. And again, all of this connects because we can't have a right perspective if we don't have a positive attitude. And we can't have a positive attitude if we are not praying and talking to God. All right. So all of those go together. And the last thing that I want to make sure that we understand of here's what we need to do when we're managing the pit. Check your posture. All right. And I don't mean like sitting, slumping, I don't mean posture in that way. Though it is good, sugar, to make sure we have good posture and, for all of us seasoned sugars, to make sure we're not getting over into osteoporosis and all of that as we hit perimenopause and all of that good stuff. But when I say posture, I'm talking about the posture of your heart. That's what I'm talking about, the posture of your heart. How do you treat people when you are in the pit? How are you talking to people? How are you talking to yourself? Are you helping others even while you are in a pit? I can tell you that in some of my most pit seasons and my most pit moments, when I helped others, when I was volunteering, it helps you to take your perspective off of what's going wrong with you and helps you to see the bigger picture, of what God is really doing, of how God is really moving, not just in your life, but in the lives of those around you. When you have a heart posture of kindness, when you have a heart posture of service, when you have a heart posture of respect, when you have a good heart posture, it changes everything. It helps to change your perspective. It helps to change your mood. When you have this posture that says, you know what, I may be in this pit, but I'm not going to treat my brother and sister like crap just because I'm in a pit. I'm not going to talk to them any kind of way just because I'm in a pit. I'm going to have a posture of submission while I'm in this pit, submission to God. I'm going to have a posture that says, I will be kind, while I am in this pit, knowing that at any moment God can come and snatch me out of this pit. Because let me just say that to you, sugar. As one that has been in a pit several times, that pit can change just like that. One phone call, one email, one application, one bank deposit, one contract, one client. That pit can change. Again, let's look at Joseph. When Joseph was in the prison, and the cook and the the cook and the servant, the king's servant, okay, the cupbearer. That's what I'm trying to say. The cupbearer. Both of them were in the prison with Joseph. They got out before Joseph, and Joseph said, "Hey, remember me. Remember how I interpreted your dreams. Remember how cool we was, in this prison." Because Joseph had a good perspective. He had a positive attitude. He continued to use his gifts while he was in the pit of that prison. And they went on, and yeah, they forgot about Joseph. They did. It was a little while had went by, but Joseph's posture never changed. He did not get bitter. He did not get angry. He did not start to, well, I ain't gonna tell them nothing because since they didn't help me, I'm not gonna use my gifts. He maintained a good posture. And one day, somebody came and unlocked them doors and said, "Hey, Joseph, the king want to see you." And in one meeting with the king, Joseph then was living in the palace, had all the riches, had all the power, all the control. In one day, one interaction, all because he kept the right posture. So, sugar, I want to make sure that I'm clear here. I know, like I said at the beginning of all of this, all of us are in a pit. These are some real interesting times that are happening right now. So I'm not saying to not feel it or act like it. No, it's real. It's happening. However, sugar, don't skip this pit. Don't think you can skip it and then go on to the next. No. Stop complaining and crying about the pit. Do not build a house in this pit. You will not be here forever. This is temporary. This is just a season. Okay? But what I need you to be doing is praying. Okay? Praying, reading your Bible, spending time with God, because only He can give you the directions that you really need in this pit. Have a positive attitude. Keep believing. Whatever that vision is, whatever that dream is, whatever that goal is, do not give up on it. Okay, make sure that you're keeping a positive perspective. What are you focusing on? Focus on the things that ultimately will help you continue to progress while you're in this pit, so that you can get the purpose in this pit, the lessons in this pit, the pruning, the progress in this pit that needs to happen right now. And maintain your good posture. Okay, don't get bitter in this pit. Do not let this pit make you angry and harsh and change ultimately who you are and who you know yourself to be on the inside. Okay, sugar? Now, as always, sugar, if you ever want to talk to me about your pits, as somebody who done been in some pits, and like I tell you all the time, my coaches and my therapists have pulled me up out of some pits. If you need to talk to somebody about your pits, I'm here. Just scan the QR code, schedule your free session so that we can talk about this pit so that you don't get stuck in this pit. Because ultimately, sugar, I want you to get onto your palace. All right, sugar? All right, sugar. Thanks so much for watching, sugar. See you next time.